Today I'm making pumpernickel bread, and this is a first time recipe, so we'll see how it turns out. In the bowl I've got 1 1/4 cups of warm water. You don't want it too warm, you just want it warm to the touch. If it's too warm it'll kill the yeast. In there I've also got 2 tablespoons of oil. The recipe calls for canola oil. I tend to use olive oil in all my breads. I've got 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, which is a packet. And I've also got in there a 1/2 teaspoon of instant coffee, and I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of molasses. This is a very dark and hearty bread. Also adding a teaspoon of yeast. It calls for 4 teaspoons of a dry milk powder. I usually use a buttermilk powder, a powdered buttermilk, and I'm just going to add a heaping tablespoon and that'll be enough. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of cocoa. I've also added a tablespoon of vital wheat gluten. It tends to loosen up your darker breads, makes them rise a little better because they tend to be a heavy, dense bread. And a 1/4 cup of cornmeal. I'm going to add 1 cup of bread flour, a cup of pumpernickel flour. If you can't find pumpernickel flour, a good dark rye flour will work. And 1 1/2 cups, or excuse me, a 1/2 cup of wheat flour.
King Arthur flour has the pumpernickel.
Yeah, King Arthur has the pumpernickel flour. I don't know if any other brands do or not. And we're going to add 2 teaspoons of caraway seeds. If you don't like caraway seeds, you don't have to add them. And then we're going to let this knead all together here. I really like the King Arthur flours. They're a very high quality flour. Robin Hood also makes a good quality flour. That dough is really wet. It sticks to you. It's more like a thick brownie batter than bread dough at this point. So I've added a couple extra tablespoons of flour, and it doesn't really matter which one of the 3 flours you add. I'm adding the whole wheat at this point to see what we can do, and you want to get it to just to a tacky consistency. You don't want it to really stick to you.
Like a post-it note.
And I've wound up adding several tablespoons to this. You want to get it, it is a little bit stickier dough, but it's handleable, however you want to say that. And you just want to shape it into a round bowl. I'm going to put it into a round ball. I'm going to put it into a grease bowl. I'm going to let it rise for an hour, hour and a half till it gets about doubled in size. And then we'll shape it into a loaf and let it do its final rise and bake it. But it's still a little bit of sticky to it. But you can, and it's a nice dark bread. Smells good. You can smell the caraway seeds in there. Well, it's risen now. It's close to doubled. And I'm going to punch it down, knead it. We'll shape it into the loaf and put it in the bread pan. I'm going to preheat the oven when it comes time to 350. And it should bake for about 20 to 30 minutes. We'll see how long this one takes. Now it's risen, and I've got the oven preheated to 350. And we'll put it in. It should take around 20 minutes or so. Okay, it's been 20 minutes and it kind of sounds a little hollow. That means it's done. We'll dump it out, let it cool on the rack. And when it's cool, it's ready.